Did LeBron James just validate the Chicago Bulls trade of Josh Giddey? I won't say that, but he did give Josh Giddey a major cosign and praise from LeBron James, so take that for what you will. Also, Joe Cowley completely kills the Chicago Bulls for their trade deadline. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about and ask the question, are the Bulls building something, or are they just rearranging the future yet again? We'll talk a little bit about that, plus dive into the mailbag right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Air Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content for today, y'all. So, LeBron James, for whatever that's worth, however you take that, for some people, I saw a lot of different reactions to this on social media, actually, where, some people were glowingly positive about it. Some people told LeBron James he should shut the hell up. But LeBron James gave major praise to Josh Giddey and what he's becoming as a player, where he said this.
I think Josh Giddey continues to get better and better. I think his development since he's got to Chicago, his ability to, what his knock was when he left OKC, it was his ability to shoot the ball. Now he's shooting the ball. You can't just sag off of him. You can't just lay off of him and dare him to shoot. He's actually shooting the ball at a high clip. Obviously, he's a big guard. He pushes the pace with a lot of steam. So he continues to get better and better. And I think Chicago, has a really good player in him.
And so, in LeBron noticing that, now LeBron hasn't always been necessarily the best evaluation of talent either. I can't remember the name of the player, but he said it was a player that he said was the best player in that draft, or his favorite player in that draft, ended up not even being in the NBA like a couple years later. So take that for what you will from LeBron. But some things that LeBron did point out were legitimate. Like, you look at Josh Giddey and how he has grown as a shooter this year, right? And that was the thing that Josh Giddey needed to do. He doesn't ever have to be some high-volume three-point shooter, but he has to shoot three ball enough to where defenses have to realize, hey, we can't just sag off of Josh Giddey anymore. When the playoff series that everybody likes to talk about in regards to the Thunder and why Josh Giddey XYZ, like, people forget, like, while he created a lot of three-point looks himself, they were partially able to sag off of him because he wasn't able to hit the three ball consistently. He's done that this season for the Chicago Bulls. There's just no doubt that he's grown as a three-point shooter, as an off-ball player as a whole, which is why, when him and Trey Jones were playing together, that it looked really good. I mean, he's taking 4 3-pointers per game, almost 5 3-pointers per game, which is the most of his NBA career. And he was hitting at an almost 38% clip before he initially got hurt, came back. He still had an almost 37% clip, which is really good. That's where Josh Giddey needs to be. I think that's a perfect spot for him to be in. And so, we already know about the triple-doubles. We know he's in elite category when it comes to the way he's able to get rebounds, assist, and score the ball. He's definitely in elite category with that one. And the thing with this, though, that it highlighted for me coming from LeBron is it goes back to my problems with AK and Artūras, right? When the Bulls traded Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso, so a lot of Bulls fans were so focused on, but we didn't get a first-round pick. We didn't get a first-round pick. And the thing is that, and I know people like to say, well, hell, they should have asked for one. You don't know what they could have asked for one and got told no. Like, that's the thing. And people like to say, well, they had so many, they just would have got rid of one. Look at what they ended up giving up to get Jared McCain. They probably don't do that if they're just giving out first-round picks because a team asked for them, right? Like, so that's the part of it that, it's cool. Like, the Bulls got Josh Giddey instead of a first-round pick, and I think that Josh Giddey was better than anybody they were probably going to get with a first-round pick from the Thunder in that particular draft. But to get back to how this highlights an issue from Artūras, and this is something that I say, and I do like to point out because I am a fair person, right? I kill AK and Eversley when they deserve it, but I do give them praise where they deserve it as well. Not praise, I do acknowledge that they every decision they make isn't bad. The Josh Giddey trade was not a bad trade. The problem is, and this continues to be a problem for AK, is that every good move that AK does is surrounded by either a questionable move, a lack of moves, or just an outright bad move, right? So yeah, you got Josh Giddey for tremendous value. And I think that Alex Caruso clearly didn't fit your mold. You moved off of a player that was becoming a free agent. You got a young restricted free agent back. You ended up negotiating with that free agent. And I tell you what, for everybody bitching about Josh Giddey's contract, he's well worth that $25 million, right? But Josh Giddey was the occasional really, really good win for the Chicago Bulls. But then you look at the number of questionable moves around that. Now, I think that was in the midst of probably AK's best year as far as positive decisions. You get the sign and trade for DeMar DeRozan. You don't get a lot back because you don't get a lot back in sign and trades, but you're able to use some of the second-round picks that you got in the DeMar DeRozan sign and trade. You directly use that to get Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, Zach Collins, and get your own first-round pick back. Now, we got to see what that first-round pick in Noah Essengay is going to turn into, but you got that first-round pick back. Then you were able to flip Kevin Huerter for Jaden Ivey. Like, if Jaden Ivey ends up getting back to the player he was before the injury, that's still another positive asset when that's all said and done, right? So, again, that was a string of really solid moves by AK. But then you look at the Ayo Dosunmu move, which wasn't necessarily the best move, right? You run into that one, which it was like, hey, you already had Sexton, Ivey, and Simons here before you even traded Ayo Dosunmu, and now that's a big question. But even in that, you got Rob Dillingham back, right, who maybe can turn that trade around and make it look like a positive. But as it stands right now, Rob Dillingham is a small scoring guard that has shown flashes more than I expected as a passer. But okay, cool. The Ousmane Dieng thing. Right now, that looks 2 games into his career with the Milwaukee Bucks. It looks like another bad move by AK, another short-sighted one by Artūras Karnišovas. But it's always that AK can make that move or a solid series of moves, but that next set to actually bring it all together, it never happens. If the Bulls would have moved at the deadline and got an Yves Missi, even if they would have moved off of Ayo Dosunmu and Coby White, if you were able to still get an Yves Missi with promising pieces in Simons and Jaden Ivey and those guys, then, hey, it looks a little bit different. At least you got a young big that you're like, okay, we're developing this young big. Could he be something of the future? Instead, you got Guerschon Yabusele, right, who has been a perfectly fine player since he's come to the Chicago Bulls, as has Nick Richards. They've been perfectly fine in their roles, but we all know these guys aren't necessarily part of the long-term future here for the Chicago Bulls, right? So it's that. Like, you made a move for your future to secure Josh Giddey. And at that point, it looked like you were going to make a lot of future moves. Now, you still got Matas Buzelis. You still got Noah Essengay on the roster, who hopefully we see some next year. You got potentially 2 first-round picks coming into this season, which, again, potential for goodness. But every time AK makes a good move, there's one that's coming shortly down the pipeline that you're going to look at and say, hey, what the fuck was that? And that's where the problem lies in with AK. He can't finish. He got completion anxiety, man. I know that sounds like that's a wild statement, my boy. That's wild to say, but it's true. Like, AK suffers from completion anxiety. You go back to look at the DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, Lonzo Ball. Like, yeah, Lonzo went down with injury. I'm not going to, but you never got the defensive 4 you needed in that one. You never got that defensive wing player that you needed in that one, right? So that was incomplete. You didn't move off Lonzo or move into different directions as soon as you could have. And so everything that AK does, again, there are some good moves in that. But then there's some ones that you look at and you're like, damn, AK, what the hell are you doing? Which brings us to our next topic. Joe Cowley completely and utterly killed the Chicago Bulls. Now, you guys know how I feel about Joe. Joe Cowley is just not a good person. I mean, I want to just be clear. He's not a good person. And people who are so glowingly about Joe Cowley, I feel like they're not good people either. But nonetheless, right? Joe Cowley wrote for the Chicago Bulls trade deadline. He gave the Bulls a D+, right? Basically saying it was passing, but barely. And when you look at it, right, when you look at the Chicago Bulls drifting more towards tanking the rest of the season out, and we'll know that for sure not once Josh Giddey and Trey Jones comes back. How we finish over the last, 27 games after the All-Star break are really going to dictate a lot of that. Me and Pat, the designer over on Locked on Bulls, actually try to predict the rest of the record for the Bulls. I think we both had the Bulls winning like 5 games remaining the rest of the way, but we'll see. All right, we'll see what happens with that. When the Bulls have 27 games left, I wouldn't be surprised if they go 5-22 over that stretch. But this trade deadline, I kept going into it and saying provide clarity, right? Regardless of who you moved, you did not or did not move, it's provide clarity on the direction of the roster. And you provided clarity on the direction of now. But again, I don't trust AK to not make a series of moves to try to get this team right back to being competitive next season. I just don't, right? But you got moves and you moved off Ayo, moved off Coby. Nikola Vucevic is gone. Nobody's really worried about the Nikola Vucevic thing. And a lot of Bulls fans aren't really thinking that the Coby White thing's a loss either. You got Anthony Simons, Colin Sexton, Rob Dillingham. You got, a bunch of second-round picks, right? And so how you use those things, as we kept saying, is going to be the big part in this, right? So we exchange expiring contracts with more expiring contracts. Some of those guys aren't going to be looking to get paid as much. Like Jaden Ivey may get paid as much as Ayo may have, and that's just because of restricted free agency. And with injury, you maybe even get him less than that. Anthony Simons, we don't really know if they do want to try to re-sign Anthony Simons. I think it takes at least 20 to 25 million, or maybe you can get him at 22, which is still less than what Coby White reportedly wanted. We'll see what Coby White's deal actually ends up being now that he's with a new team. But you get, more than that, right, or less than that, or if you end up keeping Simons. Colin Sexton, I don't mind Colin Sexton as a bench piece. I'm going to be 100% straightforward with you guys. It's just I want to see what the Bulls do with the rest of the roster if they do that. But we expired more expiring contracts, or we exchanged more expiring contracts for more expiring contracts, right? We got additional 7 second-round picks, or more, maybe more than that, as sweeteners that you can add in the trade. You got a promising piece in Rob Dillingham to see what he can turn into. He hasn't gotten a lot of opportunity. More on him in a second. You got Jaden Ivey, who's another promising piece if he can rehab back. More on that in a second, right? So this is basically an extended tryout for these guys to show how they can play. But then again, now you're tanking. And at the same time, like the fit next to Josh Giddey is one of the most important things. He hasn't come back yet. So again, more questionable stuff on top of that. The Bulls didn't get a great return. I don't think anybody can look at this right now based off what we know right now and say the Bulls got a great return. Now, could it turn into a great return? It's possible. If Rob Dillingham turns out to be the scorer, even if it ends up just being a bench scorer, we actually got a voicemail in that. But let's say he turns into a bench scoring point guard that can average between 12 and 15 points and about 6 assists per game. That's a weapon, right? That's good. If Jaden Ivey can turn into that on-ball scorer next to Josh Giddey, which he was developing really nicely as a catch-and-shoot player last season before he got hurt, if he gets back to the 17, 18-point per game score, you got a solid piece there who is going to be cost a lot less than what Coby White is, and you could probably get him for more years, around the same amount of years on a cost-control contract before you got to decide something long-term. So that's there. It's there. You got potentially 2 first-round picks coming in here, but that's not part of the trade, so you can't use that, right? So you got potential here. But when it's all said and done and you look at the aftermath of the trade deadline, you're still left with just as many questions that you had before. The questions are just different. We're looking at, are you going to pay Coby? Are you going to be able to keep Ayo Dosunmu? Are you going to keep both those guys as one or not of those guys? Same thing. Jaden Ivey, Colin Sexton, Anthony Simons. Like, are you going to keep all those guys, right? Who wants more? Can you afford both of them? Are you willing to pay that based off what you got to do with other parts of the team? It's all the same. The faces have just changed. And that's the problem with Artūras Karnišovas is that, again, he can do something good, he can do something solid, but then it's going to be followed up by a lot of questions. And that's just been the history of what it's been here with Artūras Karnišovas. Now, with that said, there's one last thing that I want to get into before we get into the mailbag. These comments from Billy Donovan in regards to Rob Dillingham, which I think say a lot about what he may have an opportunity to do here the rest of the way. I have my questions still on. Once Josh Giddey and Trey Jones comes back, what's Rob Dillingham's role with all the other guards that we have? But then again, we know Billy Donovan isn't opposed to playing 4 guards and 1 big. So there you go there. But he said this. He's the one guy that off the dribble can really go by people and get into the teeth of the defense. So there's a real great positive. But the decision-making, the shots that he's taking are not sustainable. And I told him that. But what I don't want to do is have him not be aggressive where he's like, I'm afraid to attack. He has to attack, but he's got to make better decisions. I think that will come in time. Welcome to the great developer in Billy Donovan. Billy Donovan is such, like the things that he says in words always sound good. But then when you start looking at them in practice, you're like, what the fuck did you really just say, right? Do you want him to take chances or not? And it seems like, okay, you want him to take chances, but then you don't do this shit where you did with Modest, where you start criticizing Rob Dillingham so much that then he's right back to not making decisions. Dillingham has an opportunity here, right? He's so far through the time with the Bulls, he's averaging 24 minutes, averaging 11 points, 3.7 rebounds, and 4 assists, also with 2 steals per game. That's not necessarily amazing numbers, but they are promising for a player that just didn't get a lot of opportunity in Minnesota. So now what you can do with it. Keep in mind, this is a guy that in college was a true 3-level scorer. Now, his size is going to dictate how much of that he's able to be in the NBA, but this is a guy that averaged 15 points in 23 minutes off 47% shooting from the field, 44% shooting from 3, and basically 80% shooting from the free throw line. He has an extremely explosive first step. How are you going to develop that, Billy? That's the question that everybody has here, and that's where we don't have the most faith in Billy Bubblegum Donovan, and he's going to have to show and prove. So we'll see what happens there. But Rob Dillingham is a player that he was a lottery pick for a reason. But not all lottery picks end up turning out to be something amazing, a.k.a. look at Patrick Williams. But Dillingham already has shown more aggressiveness. It's just that the confidence. That's the first thing. Rebuild the confidence, and then let's see. And I think through his little bit of time here so far, you can already see that he has more confidence because he has more freedom to be him and to make those mistakes. Now we just got to see. Hell, the light died. I haven't even been using them. But now we'll see what happens next for this team and what happens for Rob Dillingham and how he can use this opportunity to leapfrog and hopefully turn his career back around and get back to the promising player. Now, the remote's not working. The promising player that Rob Dillingham once looked like he could be. But with that said, let's get into this voicemail bag, man. This first one that we have, this one's from the original Vaughn, who's now going by his first name, Savon.
What's up, Hayes? This is Savon, the original Vaughn. I just want to talk about the Bulls' off-season plans a little bit, get my take on some things. Hopefully I'm not too long. For starters, I wanted to say I like what Simon and Sexton bring to the team, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of them returns. But ultimately, I think we should aim for a different build next to Giddy. They both have huge cap holds along with Zach Collins, so I'm thinking releasing those 3 cap holds open up more money to outbid for restricted free agent. I think that's the whole point of what they did, to get draft picks and then allowing these guys to walk without, feeling the hurt of it if it was Coby or Ayo. My favorite restricted free agent target is Walker Kessler. I don't think Kessler's going to be someone easy to outbid for, so I think if the Bulls can sign like a cheaper center like Mark Williams or even trade for a center like Keith Missy and then also draft one, then you could shore up that position pretty quickly with good fits. I specifically like Hans Steinbach. I'm sure you'll talk about him. He's in the draft. I think he has shades of Vooch offensively, and he has more defensive potential, and he could look nice as a bench big while he develops. It should still be best player available, but I wouldn't be mad at that scenario. In terms of restricted free agency, though, I think we should look at a player like Peyton Watson. If we really want to run Modest as a 3 and Smith as a part of our core as the 4, where he shined, then we should do that. I think Watson could slot in perfectly as a shooting guard. Having a lineup of like 6, 7, and up, that would just be beautiful. I think being able to scale down from the starters in size gives Billy more defensive options next to Giddy and Modest, and keeping guys off the bench like Ivy, Jones, and even Dillingham allows him to still have a plethora of traditional guards to go smaller if he needed. 6'8" point guards, 6'7" shooting guard, 2 6'9" forwards, and whatever center we get, that would just be a huge lineup with defensive potential. Watson's shooting almost 42% from 3 on 3.7 attempts this season, and the Nuggets are basically in a tough spot financially, so he feels like a great realistic target. I've heard people say Tari Eason, and he's a good player, but I don't know if his injury history warrants the amount it would take to outbid the Rockets for him, but once again, I wouldn't be mad at it. Overall, if we could end up keeping Simons or Sexton, although I wouldn't hate it, I just think we've seen similar builds with having Coby and Ayo, and we should aim for a bigger lineup, something more defensive, and allow Modest and Jalen to be that 3-4 duo. Otherwise, I'm going to be asking why we didn't just keep Coby and Ayo in the first place. AK has many options, but getting Peyton Watson, drafting a center, and signing or trading for another one is just one of my favorite ideas at the moment. So let me know what you think, though. All right, peace.
All right, the cap hold point is great, right? Because the Bulls can create some space to put an offer sheet out without renouncing the rights of both Simons and Colin Sexton. But if you want to put out multiple offer sheets, you probably got to do both, right? And that's an important part to look out here for the Chicago Bulls. And we'll see what they do with that. Like I said, very interesting part. Love the point that you made on that one. And we just got to see. Like, if the Bulls want to put out multiple offer sheets, that would really be interesting to watch, right? Like you mentioned, like Peyton Watson, Mark Williams. They want to put out offer sheets for both those guys. That could be pretty big for them to have to do. So now we got to see what that's going to look like for them. And overall, I'll say this: like, they have an opportunity here. They definitely do. And I think that's really what they offer themselves up the most, right? But I do think Sexton or Simons, one of them probably does stay. I just think that. I think you work out that deal with them. I think that's part of the reason why you traded them, so you can have their bird rights, so you can do those type of things. It's just, does it end up happening? And that's the question here. And we'll see. I think the Bulls have flexibility, and that's really what they've given themselves the most to do. We can get into a permutation of X trade, B trade, all that type of stuff, and that's all fine. But it really comes down to, what do they do with this opportunity now that they have, and that's what we don't know right now. And how aggressive do they really want to be? Do they really want to be really aggressive about going out there and try to put in a huge offer sheet out on Walker Kessler? The report is, the last one that I read at least, was that not Milwaukee, Utah wants to stay around $25 million for him in his next contract, but you got to take a look at and if you can offer over that. Right now, the Bulls, Anthony Simons, for example, has a $41 million cap hit next season. And Jaden Ivey has a $30 million cap hit, but once he signs once the Bulls extend him an offer sheet, that changes. Colin Sexton has a $28 million offer sheet. Zach Collins has a $27 million not offer sheet cap hit as well. So you're looking at those players in that case, right? So I think in this, if the Bulls want to have that flexibility to offer multiple free agents, you renounce the rights of Zach Collins because you still have Nick Richards, who only has a $9.5 million cap hold. So you renounce the rights of Zach Collins. You probably renounce the rights if you think you're going to keep Simons. If you really think that you have a good chance to keep him, you renounce Sexton. If you think you're going to keep Sexton, then you renounce Simons, who has that $41 million cap hit. But then again, you lose the opportunity to send those guys out and sign in trades as well, which is something that the Bulls have to look out for too. So we'll see. The flexibility's there. The options are there. It's just about how they use them, and we'll see. But I love if you're going to put out 2 offer sheets and you get Peyton Watson and Mark Williams, if you get both those guys, I think that's a pretty solid free agency for the Bulls just with those moves alone. And then depending on what you do in the draft, which would have already happened, you set yourself up in a pretty good situation. So we'll see there. We'll see. Let's get into this next one, man. This one's for Mike.
What up, Hayes? This is Mike up in Avondale. So what is best possible scenario for Rob Dillingham? Let's say he plays well, good enough, like he played the other night, he plays at that level or maybe a tick better for the rest of the year. Cool. We feel good keeping him. Well, we're going to keep him anyway. He's under contract. But we feel good about it. Going into next year, I mean, he's a backup player, right? We have Josh. We're probably going to have Ivy. That's a different conversation, but probably going to have him at the 2. Or maybe Sextons or Simons stick around. They're going to be at the 2. So Dillingham, what's the best possible scenario? That he's our backup point guard, right? I'm just wondering if there's any other vision you could possibly have for him besides that. Which brings me to another point. Ivy, restricted free agent. I understand what that means. That means the Bulls can match any offer that he's given. So they can let him go out there, whatever any other team offers him, the highest offer, Bulls can say, we'll give you that and you're staying with us. All this talk about bringing back Simons and Sexton. They're not restricted free agents, but how does free agency work? Because they're under contract with the Bulls now, do they get to negotiate with them first or something like that? Because otherwise, can't you just could have went after these guys without trading for them anyway. I mean, everyone's wondering if we're going to bring them back now just because they're on the team. Is that because the Bulls get to sit down with them first before they go out? Obviously, they don't get to match the deal and keep them because they're not restricted, but how is having them on the team any different than just keeping them where they were and the Bulls still try to sign them in the offseason anyway? I suppose the advantage is you get to see how they play with Giddey and with Mathis and all that, but it's only 30 games anyway. And also, if you're any good at evaluating players and any good at identifying what you need, you should be able to have an idea if a guy you're going after is going to play well in your system, and you should be correct about that most of the time. Of course, it's a good thing to actually have that guy here for 30 games. But is that like the big advantage the Bulls have, is that they get to see him play with the team, or do they actually have an advantage with Simons and Sexton when it comes to re-signing guys? I'm just not entirely clear on how all that works. So, yeah, love to hear about it. All right.
So yeah, I mean, backup isn't a problem for Dillingham. I like Josh Giddey is our point guard. Period. He's the starting point guard. He's the point guard. But as we've seen with Billy, like he's played well next to Trey Jones, and I think that Rob Dillingham is projected to be a better 3-point shooter and more aggressive scorer. So you could kind of try to balance it out that way. I'm not saying you want to start those guys, but I do see a world in which, yeah, Dillingham is probably a backup, but he can still be a high-level reserve for you because of the skill set if that ends up fitting with Josh Giddey and he ends up rounding that out. So even if he is a backup, cool. That's not necessarily like we got to stop. And I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm just for the conversation. We got to stop trying to say it like backup is a knock. It's not. Especially depending on how you're used as a backup, it can open up a lot for you. So we'll see if that. But if they feel Rob Dillingham is part of the long-term plans and is ready to play as soon as next season, then you kind of got to move Trey Jones in this offseason, right? But we'll talk about that in the offseason. As far as the free agents, here's the thing. You got to keep in mind that what you get by trading for those guys now, if they were outward free agents, you'd have to sign them with your outright cap space. because they're now on your team, you can use their bird rights to go over the salary cap to maintain those guys. Keep in mind, the Bulls are always over the salary cap, but they stay below the luxury tax. Some people think those are the same things. They're not at all. So that's it. You also have the option now to sign and trade. So let's say another team wants to come, and let's say it's a winning team that has some pretty big salaries. They want Anthony Simons, and they can't necessarily, they want to give him more than the mid-level. Hey, we can do a sign and trade where they give us something back, and then we get something. So that's another option for you, right? But then to your point, there also is the exclusive negotiating window, which I believe is 3 or 4 days before free agency officially opened. It used to be a week. Maybe there's still a week. Where you have the right to negotiate with your own free agents, re-sign them to deals before they hit the true open market. And that's another benefit. So there are a number of benefits by trading for those guys now. We just got to see if the Bulls are actually going to use it. So we'll see there. But that's it for today, y'all. That is my time for today. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Hit that notification bell if you never want to miss a post. Drop your thoughts in the comments down below. Did AK finally pick a direction, or are we once again, like I said, just reshuffling the deck? This has been Chicago Bulls Central. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.